Welcome back to the channel. When we last left you, we had finished removing the old fuel tank and fuel filter, and where we're going to pick up, we are going to get the new fuel tank in place and continue on to see if we can get her running. So see where we go today and see what other mischief we can get into. Thanks for tuning in. Here's the old fuel tank next to the freshly reconditioned fuel tank. I had this one reconditioned by Lakeside Radiator here in San Diego, so they did a great job with it. It's been tested, should be great. So I'm going to transfer the fuel pump, which is just a few months old, into this one, and we should be pretty good to go. All the hoses on this one look fantastic, so I'm not going to bother with the hoses from the old one. We're just going to transfer the stuff right over and get her going. If you have never removed a fuel pump from a Corrado or a Mark III Volkswagen, it's well, you're in for a treat. Not really. This ring, it requires either the special Volkswagen tool to remove it, which most people do not have, or a little bit of ingenuity. Now, first of all, you want to spray some PB Blaster, some penetrating lubricant down into it that'll help release the threads. And then what you're going to want to do is use something that's kind of blunt, not just a regular screwdriver, unless you have the one that's really thick and blunt. I end up using, this is one of those magnetic tool holders from Harbor Freight Tools. It's got nice rounded, blunt edges, and you stick it against the edge of these notches here, and then use a hammer or a mallet to hammer a little bit on one side, and then alternate, go to the other side, hammer a little bit, and you work your way around all these little notches. You can see where I've damaged this one a little bit from using something that was too sharp. And you just work it around a little at a time, be very patient, and eventually this thing will work loose and you'll be able to lift out the fuel pump. A Corrado fuel pump, if it is a late model G60 or any VR6, the bottom of the fuel pump does lock into the bottom of the fuel tank. So the top part is spring loaded, that'll pop right out, and the bottom part you'll need to turn counterclockwise and then release it. So because this is pretty new, it didn't take a whole lot of lubricant to get it moving, and that locking ring is coming off really nicely. So just kind of be patient, because there are a lot of threads in there and it'll eventually come off. If you're beating on yours and it doesn't seem like anything is moving, just be patient. Keep spraying penetrating lubricant down into it, keep working it. Eventually it will come off, and then you should probably wipe this clean before you start removing it, especially if you're going to be reinstalling it. Like I am going to be transferring this to the other fuel tank, so I'm going to clean all of this stuff before I reinstall it. But even before I remove it, if you are just doing something like swapping out the filter or clearing the clog filter at the bottom of your fuel pump, that does happen. They get clogged with the in-tank filter. Sometimes you just need to clear that, and you don't need to actually replace your fuel pump. But at this point, if you've pulled all this stuff and you're getting ready to pull out your fuel pump, you should just replace it anyway. Okay, here, just removing the top. There's a rubber gasket, and there is your fuel pump. Like I said, you want to reach down, turn it counterclockwise, that releases it, and then this whole sucker will come out. And just be gentle with it. You do not want to break your sender unit. They are rare, they are hard to find, and there are at least 3 different types of them. So you want to make sure that you have one that matches up with your fuel pump, and if you don't, then you're in for, well, some challenging engineering. All right, here's a note when you're reinstalling your fuel pump. Now, I've already got mine locked down in place in the new tank. This rubber gasket, a lot of people will put it on the lid and then try to shove the whole thing down, and that will just cause you frustration. Put the gasket in place first, put a little bit of fuel on the inside of it to lubricate it, and then you should be able to just very nicely slide it down in place. Now, orientation does matter, because your lines are coming in from the front here. So make sure that as you put it in place, there are things tugging on it from inside, but you want to make sure that it is actually lined up with where you want it to be when it is installed. So there you go. You want that arrow lined up here. There's an arrow on there that will help you out immensely, and I'm not lined up, so I need both hands to do this. I think we have success. We have changed the fuel filter, our good friend down here. We have installed the new tank, and everything has gone back together pretty well. Everything's lining up. So now the next step here is to put some fuel in it, and hopefully she fires back up. All right, so new fuel tank is installed. All the hoses are hooked up, but before we put the lid back on, we're gonna do one last test, and that's of course to make sure she fires up. So since I had taken out the fuel filter and a lot of the fuel had run out of the lines, what we're gonna do is when we put the key in, we're gonna turn it and leave it just turned on for about 30 seconds. Now the pump turns on, the fuel pump turns on briefly to charge the system, and we'll just turn it off, turn it back on. You can hear the clicking of the fuel pump relay, which is kicking on to prime the system. If you listen, here it goes. Oh, of course, you're just hearing my dogs barking now. Try that again. All right, hear that click? Now it should be primed enough. And there we go. We have life. So, mission successful with the new fuel tank and the fuel pump. Of course, we're going to check for leaks, make sure nothing's leaking out of any of those hoses, and then the real test will be when I take it to the smog place and they pressure test it to make sure that there aren't any leaks happening there. But I think we got it taken care of. All right, I successfully replaced the fuel tank on the Corrado, replaced the fuel filter and the fuel pump relay, which was faulty and was not letting it start up. So now that's all sorted out, and on to our next thing. That's all I'm going to be working on today, but I will be back with you shortly with more Corrado repair videos as we get this sucker back on the road. God bless. Talk to you soon. Make sure to like, subscribe, and share if you like what I'm doing here. All right, see ya. Thing. I was gonna pop my wheel back on and get this thing back on the ground so I could put it into more enclosed, safer storage for the time being until I come back to work on it again. However, as I was going to put the wheel on, I discovered yeah, nice big crack in a place where it had been previously repaired. So we're gonna have to take that back where the shop repaired it and have them do it again. So I'll be dropping that off today. Car won't be back on the ground today, but this week she'll be back on the road and we'll proceed to fix more things.